our engineering panel this evening. We are so excited to have you joining us from wherever you may be coming to us from. So thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about Northwestern and about Northwestern engineering specifically. Tonight, we have some lovely panelists who will be talking to you. The way this is going to work is you can drop all of your questions into the chat, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible over the next little bit. We will kick things off with some introductions so that you can know who's going to be chatting with you today. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Bernstein. I am a recent graduate of Northwestern. I was in the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences, where I studied neuroscience and psychology. So I will be moderating today, not trying to answer any of your engineering questions. Do not worry. And with that, I will kick it off to the more important panelists tonight. So Olivia, why don't you start things off?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia. I am a fourth year from Washington, D.C. I'm studying biomedical engineering and psychology, as well as being on the pre-med track. And when I'm not giving tours, one other thing I do on campus is I am a peer advisor helping to guide our new students through our one-week orientation called Wildcat Welcome. And I will give it to John.
Thanks, Olivia. Hi guys, I'm John. I am also a fourth year student studying chemical engineering. I'm also minoring in economics and computer science. And when I am not giving virtual tours or real tours, I am the associate director of TEDx Northwestern U, one of the largest completely student-run TED organizations in the world. Jordan, why don't you go next?
Hello, everyone. My name's Jordan, and I am a third year from San Carlos, California, right in the Bay Area. And when I'm not, I'm studying industrial engineering and minoring in computer science. And when I'm not giving tours, I'm working on projects around the world with Engineers Without Borders. And next, I can pass it on to Margot.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margot. I'm a senior from Portland, Oregon, studying industrial engineering and minoring in computer science. And when I'm not giving virtual tours or real tours, you can find me as a peer mentor for several of our introductory computer science courses.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your intros. So again, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We are looking forward to answering everything you're curious about, but we will start off first with what makes Northwestern engineering unique. So Olivia, can you talk to us a little bit about whole brain engineering at Northwestern?
Yeah, definitely. So whole brain engineering is kind of a motto that our School of Engineering, McCormick, goes by. So it's combining the typical aspects of engineering that you might think of, kind of like logic, math, all of that, with the creativity that you might think of in a typical, more like humanities course. And you see that overall in a lot of our classes. So one of them is design thinking and communication. We can elaborate a little bit more on this course later, but essentially you create a product with your team, but integrated into this is being able to write a whole report together. So you really see kind of that duality of a lot of the typical engineering skills with those writing, speaking skills that are also really important for our engineers.
Awesome. And do you want to talk a little bit about engineering first as well?
Sure. So Engineering First is the curriculum that we think is really important for all of our engineers to study, regardless of what their major is. So this includes a sequence called the Engineering Analysis sequence. It's a year-long set of courses that really go from the foundations of a lot of the engineering principles. So this starts with linear algebra, teaches you coding, also basic physics. And for me, I really loved this sequence because it really starts from assuming that you really know nothing. And for something like coding, I had never had any experience with that. And it was really awesome to have this course right away so that I could catch up with a lot of my peers who I know some of them had coded since they were like 10 years old. So it's a really awesome course for McCormick students. And as well, I think it really produces a very collaborative environment since all first year students go through these classes together. So right from the start, you have groups that you know are engineers that you can do do homework sets with. And I think it's a really great building of community. And another class that is in this curriculum is the design thinking and communication class that I was talking about. So again, a class that really teaches you real world applications of engineering right from the start.
Awesome, thank you. John, would you be willing to talk to us a little bit about some of the professor relationships that you've had in your time at Northwestern, and just kind of how accessible professors are for students in McCormick?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So professors, at least in my experience, have always been super accessible and super awesome. One of my first professors was my DPC professor named Peter Savetta, and he's actually the director of undergraduate research here at Northwestern. I've stayed in touch with him now for all 4 years. I continue to talk with him. He actually coincidentally ended up being the advisor of TEDx, which is the club that I'm in. On top of that, professors are always accommodating. All professors will have office hours. And if you can't get into office hour sections with the professors, they'll often be willing to meet with you outside of that time. And now that means like scheduling a Zoom call with you one-on-one, whereas before it meant like just popping by their office or something like that. Also, professors are super accommodating with helping you figure out what you want to do. So Professor Savetta was super helpful with me trying to figure out if I wanted to study chemical engineering or maybe switch into the School of Arts and Sciences and study economics. I've also had professors more to the research side of things. If you're interested in professors' research, it's really, really easy to get in contact with them. One of my professors for my thermodynamics class, it was his first quarter at Northwestern. And afterward, I asked him, hey, I know you're new. Are you doing any research? And he said yes. And me and 2 other classmates of mine were able to join his lab where we've been doing research for the last 2 years. So professors at Northwestern are definitely super accessible, super caring, and I have nothing but the best to say about them.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We have quite a few questions about computer science. So Margot, I know you're a computer science minor, so we have a question about how has your computer science minor helped you in your engineering studies? And if you could also maybe talk a little bit about how easy it might be for computer science majors to dabble in other engineering fields if you have friends or know folks who are CS majors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So CS for me was definitely something that I didn't come into college thinking that I would want to study whatsoever. But actually I had to take 2 of the introductory CS classes as part of my industrial engineering requirements. And so that's kind of when I first saw like just how relevant CS is, really regardless of what you're studying, but particularly within McCormick. Really all of my classes that I've had have actually had some sort of a coding component. It's not always super rigorous or anything like that, but having a coding background is super, super helpful in almost all of the classes that I've ended up taking within McCormick. That's absolutely not something that I expected. I actually chose industrial engineering because I thought it was like pretty far away from things like CS. So I didn't think that was something that I was going to enjoy whatsoever. Obviously that changed. But yeah, I would say that having that CS background definitely makes things a lot easier. Just to give an example, this quarter, I am put into a client project challenge as part of my industrial engineering requirement. And through this, we actually have to do a lot of coding for our client. And this is something that varies depending on what project you're put in. But the fact that I have that CS background makes it really easy for me to step up and kind of take over those more technical roles within my group. So yeah, that answers the first part of the question. Could you remind me what you're chatting about for the second half?
Yeah, definitely. We had a question about how easy it is for computer science majors to be able to explore other engineering fields.
Sure. So again, it's a little tough for me to talk about from personal experience just because I'm only minoring in it. But I do have a couple of friends who are double majoring in computer science and another form of engineering. I don't believe you can minor in any other in any of the type of engineerings within McCormick. So that makes it a little bit challenging, but as always, you can take courses in really whatever field you want to at Northwestern, as long as you've met the prerequisites. And I know for at least with industrial engineering, I have a lot of friends who I've taken classes with who are not majoring in IE, but just thought it would be interesting, or their requirements will require them to take a couple of IE courses as well. So I know that wasn't like a super robust answer, but generally speaking, if you are majoring in anything, you definitely have the opportunity to take classes in other fields as well.
No, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Jordan, now that we've talked a little bit about some specific questions of majors and minors, can you walk us through the process of declaring a major in McCormick, or how you choose your specific field of engineering, and a little bit about that timeline as well?
Yeah. So what's actually really nice about the whole engineering first program that we have is that you get to try out a lot of classes and a lot of different things at the start at Northwestern. So we actually don't need to choose a major until the spring of our second year. And I actually just declared my computer science minor this quarter, so fall of my third year. So there's a lot of flexibility on when you can choose your major. And within each engineering program, you have to take basic engineering classes. So that kind of lets you explore different engineering courses without doing courses that aren't going to count towards your major. So like I could have taken a material science course or a biomedical engineering course, and that would still count to my industrial engineering major, but it would let me explore those majors in case those were ones I wanted to choose.
Awesome, thank you. And Olivia, you have actually an additional field of study outside of McCormick. So you're also studying psych. So can you talk to us about the process of declaring that, and also maybe just a little bit about how that works for folks who may not know?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my favorite things about Northwestern is that it's so easy to declare another major or a minor or a track. And one of the things that goes along with this is our advising system. So for each additional major or minor, et cetera, that you declare, you get another advisor. So for me, I have a BME advisor, I have a psych advisor, and also a pre-med advisor. And they have been really amazing in helping me try to plan out my courses, just because doing a double major and a pre-med track can be a lot in terms of just fitting in the right amount of classes when they need to be taken, and seeing what can, double count for my pre-med requirements and also my psych major, for example. But in terms of actually declaring that major, it's super easy. It's honestly just filling out a piece of paper and turning it in. I think it took me like under 5 seconds. So definitely something that you'll see a lot of students do at Northwestern is having like a double major, just because it is so simple and easy to add on.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question shifting gears a little bit about experience and culture. Jordan, could you talk about your first year experience in McCormick specifically, maybe a little bit about Wildcat Welcome and a bit more on your experience in the first year sequences?
Yeah, so when you first come to Northwestern, we have something called Wildcat Welcome, and that's for all freshmen. And so that's like before the first week of classes, you get put in a group of around 10 people, and all the schools are together. It's within your school. So I was with a bunch of people in McCormick, and that helped me just meet a bunch of peers, people I'd be working with in classes, and help me build a foundation of connections within the class so that I would be able to have people I can take classes with and work together with. As a whole, the McCormick, our engineering school is very work together based. So we don't work against each other. We're always working together. And it's very helpful to have the peers and connections with you. Yeah, I would say that throughout McCormick, overall, it's a good experience. We have the different engineering classes and engineering sequences, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And then in terms of overall student culture beyond just your first year, Margot, can you tell us about your experience with just like the culture in McCormick and even the culture more broadly at Northwestern as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the culture of Northwestern is just like first and foremost my favorite thing about this school. I think like going into Northwestern, especially going into engineering, I was a little bit worried that it was going to be super competitive, especially because engineering does get kind of a bad rap as being a more competitive or cutthroat major. But that's absolutely not what I've found whatsoever. By being in McCormick for the past 3 years. It's really been a very, very collaborative environment. I know these just sound like cliche buzzwords, but it's really, really true. I've never once had an experience when I felt like I was competing with my classmates. If anything, like I would often do a lot of assignments or study for tests with a lot of my friends. Like no one's withholding notes or anything like that from you. So yeah, really like working throughout the McCormick program has been a really positive experience for me. It's a really great culture, both within the school and then just within Northwestern as a whole. I would say like the general vibe of Northwestern students is kids who like to work hard and play hard. It's not, you're going to spend a lot of time in the library on midterm weeks and things like that. But at the same time, like there's a very, very rich social life here at Northwestern too. I've never once felt like, oh, in order to graduate in 4 years or do the major and minor that I want to, I have to like not be able to go out on weekends or see my friends and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the culture at Northwestern is really, truly fantastic. And that definitely carries over to McCormick as well.
And Jordan, for kind of an extension of that, what would you say dorm life is like, and I guess kind of residential life and residential culture at Northwestern? And do most students opt to stay on campus or move off campus?
Yeah, so we actually have a first year, or well, I guess not now, but we used to have a first year, 2-year live-on requirement. And with that, you get put in a house, and so you can either choose between a residential community, a residential hall. And with that, you're either choosing, so residential hall is more of a dorm base, that's normal. There's singles, doubles, triples, and in that you're gonna be, there's gonna be a food area nearby. So we have 5 dining halls on campus, and the food's very good. I like the food overall. And in your first year, you're on an unlimited meal plan, which means everyone gets unlimited swipes at the dining hall, which was really important to me. I love that. It means you can go whenever you want. And we also have late night food, so that's nice. And then in residential communities, that's more of a community base, so you apply into them. And with that, there's an engineering based one. There's a like a performing arts one, and there's a women's residential college. And with that, so yeah, there'll be community-based events for people to meet up, and they'll hold speakers. So you'll have an engineering speaker or a faculty member talking to you, and that's always nice. It really helped. So in my residential hall, we had cider talks, which every Sunday night cider. And that was just a great way to meet the other people in my dorm building. Every Sunday, everyone came down and drank cider together, and we just talked. We met each other. It's a great way to meet people as freshmen and just form connections. And then, so there's a 2-year live-on requirement, but then after that, people live off campus mostly. And with that, all off-campus housing is right around Evanston, so it's not really off campus. It's about a 5-minute walk maximum usually to someone's apartment off campus.
Awesome. We have a couple of questions about classes. So John, we had a question about getting into classes as a first-year student. Can you always get into the classes that you need, or are you ever locked out or closed out of classes that you need or want to take?
Yeah, so in my experience, getting into classes has usually been pretty straightforward. A lot of the majors at Northwestern have pre-registration. So once you've declared a major, you can get into classes that are major specific a little more easily. That's especially true with computer science. Those classes can tend to be more competitive because it's our fastest growing major here at Northwestern. But in my experience, the biggest barrier sometimes to getting into classes you want is the other classes that you're taking, or if you have any required courses you're taking. So sometimes they just won't line up. And that's where our course and teacher evaluation system is super helpful. You fill this thing out at the end of every quarter, kind of rating your professors and rating the classes you took. And from that, you then have access to a whole database of classes and professor ratings. You can see, oh, this class had really good ratings, and if it's my schedule, I can take this. You do all your classes through this website called Caesar. It allows you to actually sort by like location on campus when you're choosing your courses. You can look at times of the day, stuff like that. Most courses will happen like 3 times a week for an hour. Some classes will be twice a week for an hour and a half. I can speak from personal experience. Chemical engineering classes actually meet 4 times a week for an hour, so a little more rigorous than maybe some other disciplines. But generally, I haven't had much issue with classes. The ones that go quickly are our most popular ones, like Marriage 101 always fills up just from senior registration because seniors get priority over underclassmen. But generally, there's a lot of class options out there, and if you can't find necessarily the class that you really want to be in, there's always a couple other good options you can do. And that's part of why the quarter system is so great, is because you can take often. Classes are offered multiple times during the year. So if you can't get into it in the fall for whatever reason, maybe it's full, which is rare, or maybe it just conflicts with something else you had, you can take it later in the year. So course is definitely super flexible and a wide variety too.
We have a fun question for the next one. So we'll do a popcorn style for this one where everyone can answer. So our question is, what is your favorite class or a class that gave you, quote, a brain break from engineering? Does anyone want to go first?
I can start us off. So one class that I took to get a little brain break from engineering my freshman year fall quarter, actually, and I took this because I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do engineering, so I was sort of exploring different disciplines. But the class that I took was Intro to Sociology, or Soc 110, and I took it because my sister had just taken it the quarter before and was like, this was a dope class, like I really loved it, learned so much, you should definitely take it. I was like, you know what, I need a break from my engineering first requirements, so I decided to take it, and it ended up just being an awesome class. The professor is one that, like, I talked to so many people beforehand and then been like, oh, definitely take it with this guy. He really knows what he's talking about. Makes class super fun. He break danced for us on the last day, which was absurd, but great. And it was just a really awesome class that like gave you a very good holistic view of sociology. For me, it was kind of nice to have that break where I was like at this point having class discussions and writing papers as opposed to, looking at lectures and then doing math for my tests. But I thought it was a really awesome way to like get a bunch of students really engaged. He made the class super awesome, despite the fact that it was in a fairly large lecture hall. And that was definitely one of my favorite classes that I've taken.
Olivia, do you want to go next? John, then
okay,
Olivia. Great.
I took my freshman year a class called Highlights of Astronomy because it was always something that I've been interested in, totally unrelated to what I'm studying at Northwestern. A relatively easy class. It was really interesting. You just kind of got a brief overview of kind of all the major stuff like stars, galaxies, whatever. As part of the class, you actually had to go to Dearborn Observatory, which is our telescope on campus. It was, when it was built, the largest glass telescope in the world. It was meant for a school in like Mississippi, but because of the Civil War, they couldn't go south from Boston, so they brought it to Chicago. It was at Chicago for a while. School burned down in the Chicago fire, came to Northwestern. It was actually the first telescope to ever see a white dwarf star, which I learned in that class, and I still know. It was a fun class to take, kind of good brain break, and it was something that I've always been interested in, and I got to explore a little bit.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to mention before I talk about my favorite class is that it's really nice that these like brain breaks, I love that term, but they're actually really integrated into the McCormick curriculum as theme requirements, and those really like almost force you out of the engineering bubble and require you to take classes in the social sciences and humanities categories. So my favorite class, I actually would never, I don't think, have taken it without that requirement. And it really allows you to broaden your horizons and take classes outside of just your major requirements. Just wanted to add that. But my favorite class is in Asian and Black relations in the US class that I took. For me, it was really awesome to be able to talk about identity in a classroom setting, since I had a lot of dialogues about this sort of outside of academics. And it was really interesting to be able to actually like read journals and articles that had been published about these topics and these like race relations. And I really loved the structure of the class because it went kind of like through a timeline. So it started in the beginning, kind of when the first immigrants were coming to the US, and then ended in talking about race relations in terms of like students at Northwestern. So to see that kind of dynamic shifting throughout time and be able to actually dissect campus culture surrounding race relations was really awesome, and definitely something that I enjoyed a lot about that course. And I'll popcorn over to Jordan.
Yeah, so I've actually only taken one class outside of the School of Engineering, and that was I'm saving my other theme requirements, or courses to study abroad. And so the one course I took was Social Inequality, Race, Class, and Power. And I took that just because I wanted to learn more about current event issues. And I really enjoyed that class because it was discussion based. So it had us talking to 5 different students every single class. So I got to meet a lot of people, a lot of my peers. And I took this last year, so I got to meet a lot of first years through that class. And it was a great way of just learning and discussing current issues with people at Northwestern.
Awesome. Thank you all. We are going to shift gears and talk a little bit about pre-professional things. So Olivia, you are on the pre-med track. Can you talk about how you manage being on a pre-professional track in addition to engineering and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So, for those that I guess don't know, what being on the pre-med track means is that it's not like you have an additional major or anything like that. It's just a set of courses that most medical schools require you to have taken during your undergraduate career in order to apply for them. So, for me, I think biomedical engineering definitely intersects the most in terms of how many classes overlap with the pre-med curriculum. That being said, I also know people who are, for example, material science and engineering and pre-med. So it definitely can be done. But for me, I really thought biomedical engineering was the perfect intersection between engineering and also physiology and medicine. So like I was saying before, my pre-med and BME advisors have been really important for me in terms of planning my classes. So they were really awesome in telling me, when I should be taking certain courses based on when they're offered and also which ones overlap so that I didn't need to like double up on certain requirements. So they were extremely helpful. And in general, I think it's not too bad in terms of the course load. It just takes a little bit of planning ahead of time, but definitely pretty manageable in terms of what classes I'm taking each quarter.
Awesome. And then for other kind of professional things, Jordan, I know you've worked with NCA before. Can you talk about your experience working with NCA, which for all of you stands for Northwestern Career Advancement, which is our career services office here? That, and then also some of the internship opportunities that maybe you've had or peers of yours have had?
Yeah, so McCormick, the School of Engineering, we actually have our own career advancement office. And so that's really nice because it helps focus on engineering opportunities. And we have our own website for McCormick, specifically engineering opportunities. So I found that very useful throughout the recruiting process. And I've used the office to go over my resume. So I've gone in there multiple times. I think every single fall quarter, I'm always going in there, having them look over my resume, making sure it's up to date, making sure it's good. Looking for revision, so that's always helpful. And then I did a data science internship this summer, and I used the McCormick Career Advancement Office right after that because I got a return offer, and I wanted to talk through with them what that process is like, how they can help me extend it or not extend it, and help me with career advice and future plans.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. John, could you talk a little bit about the Northwestern Co-op program, which is somewhat of an extension on a really great professional opportunity for students to engage with while they're still pursuing an undergraduate degree?
Yeah. Disclaimer, I have not taken part in the co-op program, but also talk about it a little bit. One of my good friends, Jared, has done the program. He worked with General Electric for a couple of quarters and is now actually staying around for getting a master's degree. But just a little bit of an overview of the co-op. To start, students will take a class called Intro to Career Development, which is a non-credit class that's offered through our career development office. It's open to students like of all majors and minors. They have a bunch of like these small little non-credit classes that kind of help you figure out what you're doing. But you take that class, you have decent enough grades, and then you will work with the company over 3 to 6 quarters, and then they'll graduate in either 5 or 6 years. And you'll also often do a summer with the company as well. So that could be 2 quarters during the school year and 1 during the summer or something like that. While you're working for this company, you will still be a full-time student. You'll be registered in non-credit classes at that time. So you'll maintain full-time student status. You'll remain covered under like health insurance and auto insurance, and your student loans won't be any issue. They won't go into repayment or anything like that. During this time, you'll also be paid by the company that you're doing a co-op with. You'll basically work with them. You'll be actually eligible for a tuition discount in the final year of your study. So you lock in basically that 4th year tuition amount as your 5th year. You don't go with any tuition increases. And this is a great option to kind of understand more of what being a full-time employee is like and kind of explore a company more in depth than like your typical summer internship. My friend Jared, who did it, really, really loved it. He worked in Ohio at one of GE's large plants for a while. And from his experience, it sounds like a really great program. I personally haven't taken part in it, but it seems super awesome. You're also eligible to live in campus housing while you're working. So if you're doing a job in Chicago for any kind of Chicago or local company, you can still live on campus with your classmates and friends. And actually, it's like kind of like working a 9 to 5, which is very different. So you'll be done with work at the end of the day and won't have to come down home and do homework or projects or stuff like that. So if it's something that you're interested in, it definitely exists. There's a lot of guidance out there from our engineering career development office, like Jordan talked about a little bit, which is the Northwestern McCormick specific career advising office. Optical stuff, check out the McCormick website for any more details.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was an awesome explanation. The next question we're going to do popcorn style. So what attracted you to engineering, or what made you decide you wanted to go into engineering and study it at Northwestern? So Margot, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely wasn't attracted to engineering right off the bat. I wasn't like going through high school being like, yes, engineering is my passion and my future path. Kind of came into college with a very like broad opinion of engineering and what I might want to potentially major in. But I did actually apply into McCormick just in case I wanted to stay in it. And so I did have that exposure to some of those engineering first classes, my first couple of quarters at Northwestern. And that's really what solidified like me wanting to stay within engineering. I took DTC, which is a course that has been thrown around a little bit in this session. And DTC, just as a reminder, design thinking and communication, was really that hands-on course that gives first-year students a solid introduction to engineering, besides just having those prerequisite classes like taking math and physics and things like that. I think if I'd just been taking math and physics, I probably wouldn't have known quite as early on that engineering is something that I wanted to stay in, because you can like math and physics and hate engineering. It's a perfectly valid way to feel. And so I ended up taking DTC, really, really liked it. I liked the heavy problem solving focus that engineering is really a big part of. And so from that's kind of the reason that I wanted to stay in engineering. And then throughout just the ability to take a bunch of classes in different fields, I determined that industrial engineering was the one that I wanted to stay in. I can send this over to Olivia.
Yeah, my answer is actually really, really similar to Margot's. Coming from my high school, I really honestly didn't know what engineering was. I think I applied to McCormick because I was like, well, I like math and I like science, and engineering kind of seems like it combines the two. But DTC, like Margot was talking about, I took it my very first quarter, and it was so incredible to see the direct applications of what engineering actually is. So with my project, we were building a device for a woman who had hemiplegia, meaning that half of her body was paralyzed. And she wanted us to design a device for her to help her put on gloves in the winter, since she lives in Chicago. Obviously, it gets really cold. And for her paralysis, it was really hard for her to actually like extend her fingers to put on gloves. And we worked with her physical therapist, and it was just so incredible to see over just a 10-week quarter that we were able to really design a device to her standards, be able to produce that together as a team and actually build it, and then present it to her after the 10 weeks were over, and see that she was actually still like using it and being able to have that really impact her lifestyle and really improve her day-to-day life. And for me, being a very like goal-oriented person, that was what made me really fall in love with engineering. And I think moreover, in a lot of the classes that I've taken, for example, my pre-med classes, where I see other engineers, I think it's really clear that you have this engineering mindset that you learn during your time at McCormick. In a lot of my classes, I have some of my classmates will just sort of like memorize information. And for me, personally, being someone who's, first of all, my memory is terrible, but moreover, I just like knowing the why. And I think often that is what I see with my fellow engineers, is that they're always asking more questions and wanting to know, why something happens, what happens if this doesn't work correctly, and all of that. So that was a very long-winded answer, but that was kind of my reasoning. And I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Olivia. So my kind of why I'm interested in engineering, why I applied to, or what attracted me to it, is in high school, I really liked math and chemistry and computer science. It's kind of like the three things that I enjoyed the most. And I figured that engineering would be a good place to start with that. I didn't really know what engineering was or what it would turn into. So I applied as a chemical engineer, and over the course of my first 2 years, kind of explored that. DTC was definitely really attractive, but I didn't know what chemical engineering was still. So I kind of started to explore econ and computer science, which are my minors. But at the same time, I was still kind of sticking out with chemical engineering, trying to feel it out. And I'm glad I did, because I've gotten to the point where I'm now in a couple classes, chemical engineering senior lab and senior design, which are actually surprisingly similar to DTC. And you kind of get to see what the real world engineering experience is like. You're given a problem, you're told like kind of that's it. That's all they give you. And then you have on your own to figure out what's happening, why, what questions am I supposed to ask, what are all the details, and that engineering mindset that Olivia talked a little bit about, like kind of figuring out what actually is happening, what questions should I be asking, how do I explore, has been super exciting and super kind of interesting throughout all 4 of my years here. So it's a little bit about what attracted to me and a little bit about why I've liked it so far. Also, I'll say it's a really good way of, in my mind, showing that you're analytically strong. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get a job working in engineering afterward. I don't think I plan on doing that right now. I'm recruiting for non-engineering post-grad work, but that being said, it gives you a lot of variety, which I think maybe some other things might not give you. And then Jordan, I think your last one.
Yes, thank you. And so I knew from high school I wanted to do engineering. I had a couple majors in mind, but I wasn't sure exactly what major I wanted to do. So the reason I ended up choosing Northwestern specifically was because, like everyone has said so far, DTC, I wanted that hands-on experience, and it's really rare that you're going to get hands-on experience in an engineering program your first year in college. So that was really crucial to me. And then also just the ability, since we are a quarter system, being able to take as many classes your freshman year and being able to explore what you're interested in and really getting that understanding of the different types of engineering before actually choosing your major was really important to me. So that's why I chose Northwestern engineering.
Those were all awesome. Thank you all so much. Our next question is about studying abroad with engineering. And I know, Margot, you studied abroad. So chat with us about how you did that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the beginning, I definitely didn't think that study abroad could be an option for me. I was kind of like, okay, well, I have a lot of required classes I still have to get out of the way. And a lot of the time, engineering credits can be tricky to transfer from abroad. So I kind of wrote it off. But right before junior year fall was rolling around, my twin sister was like, oh, I can't wait to go to Paris. I'm so excited. And of course, I'm like, well, she's not going to study abroad without me. So at that point, I was like, okay, I have to make it happen. So I just went into our Global Learning Opportunities office. That's our study abroad office. And they have a ton of advisors who will sit down with you and basically help you flesh out the best plan for you to study abroad. And at Northwestern, about a third of all students do study abroad at some time, including during summer quarters. So it really is a super, super feasible option. I think I just had it in my head that it wasn't going to be, but there are several schools that are abroad that will either have programs through Northwestern so that your credits can transfer directly, or will just have a lot of engineering courses that you can then chat with your professors or the head of your department to have count for courses. So I ended up going to university in London, had a great time. I took 2 classes that were fully unrelated to my major, and then my other 2 classes did count towards engineering credits for my major. So because of that, I'm still fully on track to graduate within 4 years, even though I added a minor and kind of messed around my freshman year not knowing what I wanted to major in. So it's absolutely more than possible to study abroad as an engineer. And yeah, just go to the study abroad office if you're at all interested in studying abroad, and they can definitely help find a program that will fit your needs and schedule.
Awesome. John, our next question is for you. What do people do for fun? Are events on campus or off campus? And what were some of the most fun events you've gone to over the past year?
One thing that I do for fun, and I know a lot of other students do, is go to Northwestern sporting events. We are in the Big Ten. We're the only private school in the Big Ten, which means you get free admission to every single sporting event you want to go to. That often means you get free shirts, free towels, like you see up there in the corner in my room. I've missed only 3 football games so far in my 4 years. That included going to the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis a couple of years ago. We had a good year. Northwestern bussed down every student who wanted to go to Indianapolis completely for free. I think like 5,000 students about went out of the 8,000 undergrads. We used like all the Greyhound buses in the Chicagoland area to get there. The third quarter was fantastic. Was most fun I've had watching football. The rest of the game, not so much. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of fun stuff to do, and sporting is just one of those. There's a lot of great social communities on campus. Jordan talked a little bit about that. Some of those come from our residential colleges, which are the themed living options on campus. Some of those come from student groups outside of campus. I'm on the club golf team, which is just a group of people who like to play golf. It's not as serious as, say, high school golf. I played in high school, but it's still nice to be able to get out. There's also intramural sports and varsity sports, which I talked a little bit about. Intramural sports are even low key than club sports. Club sports kind of run the gambit. You have some teams that are kind of more involved, some teams that are less involved. In McCormick, sometimes people are worried that they won't have time to have fun or to explore Chicago. I say that's definitely not true. There's tons of reasons to get downtown. My first year class got to go see Hamilton for free as a part of our orientation. There's Northwestern Day at Wrigley Field every May, where you get to go to the Cubs game for like $5, and you get a like Northwestern purple hat. So there's tons of stuff to do both in Evanston and on campus and at our sporting venues and in Chicago. So lots of fun stuff. Everyone kind of finds their niche as you kind of move along.
Great. And then Olivia, this is our final question before we do some fun Why Northwestern questions. So is there a true sense of caring and understanding for students' mental well-being from professors and administrators in terms of workload and stress?
Yeah, I love this question because I think this is something that's really important. Short answer, yes, definitely. I've had my personal experiences with this. So my second year at Northwestern, first of all, I was taking organic chemistry. So that alone was really, really hard for me, as well as just some things in my personal life that were going on. And there were definitely multiple occasions where I would go up to a professor and just say, you know, I'm really struggling right now. Is there any way that I can take this test on Friday instead of Wednesday? And they would be more than willing to help me and also provide me with like resources or tips on how to study and all of that. So definitely, I think professors, they know that you have lives outside of the classroom. They know that you're not just a student all the time. And additionally, I would say that we've talked a lot about like the collaborative culture in terms of the students in McCormick. And that also goes along, I think, really nicely with this question. I've never done a problem set alone. And I've had so many friends say like, you know, I know you have a really busy week this week. I'll get started on this problem set and I'll try to help you out later on in the week. And I think in general, that collaborative culture is also really amazing for, you know, when things get hard in terms of the workload and just dealing with other things outside of the classroom.
That's awesome. So in our final 3 minutes, we're going to do some really quick popcorn Why Northwesterns. So Jordan, tell us your rapid version Why Northwestern.
Yes. So besides the great engineering program and the people, I also really love Northwestern's location. Being on the beach and on the water, it feels like a beach campus in the fall and spring, which I love. And then I spend a lot of time going to Chicago. Chicago is an amazing city. Can't preach that enough. I go there all the time. I went on a donut tour. A lot of fun things to do on the weekend and free time. Oh, and Olivia, you can go next.
Yeah, for me, one of my favorite things about Northwestern is the quarter system. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm doing 2 majors and also a pre-med track, and I don't think, quite honestly, that would be feasible in most semester schools. Just the sheer amount of classes that I can take with the quarter system has been really amazing. And just being able to come here and know that the doors are open in terms of also exploring other opportunities and not needing to limit what I'm studying just because of the amount of classes that I need to take has been one of my favorite things. And I'll popcorn to Margot.
Yeah, so my Why Northwestern has everything to do with the people here. I, again, coming into college, had no idea I wanted to study engineering, so I wasn't really looking for engineering programs in particular. But when I visited Northwestern, it just was so clear to me that the students here are not only just super smart and really passionate about the things that they care about, but also just super down to earth, genuinely good and friendly people, which was an awesome combination. And I think one that doesn't come super easily. So yeah, that's what I found when I visited, and that's what I've continued to find for my past 3 years here. And go ahead, Jordan, or John, sorry.
All right, my Why Northwestern, aside from all the things that have been said, which I totally agree with, for me was also a location and size. Northwestern's, I think, the perfect size for me at like 8,000 undergrads. My high school was about 2,000 for context. So at the end of my 4 years in high school, I kind of knew most of the people. I recognized all the faces. At Northwestern, you get a little bit of that community and kind of sense of familiarity. If you walk down Sheridan Road, which is our main street, you'll always see a couple people that you know, maybe a group of friends. But you'll always also see new people who you haven't met before, and you're continually meeting new people for the whole time that you're here at Northwestern. Meeting new people like in your classes as you kind of advance in your major. Chemical engineering is now at like 30 students in my year, so I kind of know them all at this point. But I still get to take like econ classes with 60 or 70 kids who I've never met before. And there's kind of that balance of familiarity and pushing me outside my comfort zone. So that and probably everything else.
Well, thank you to the four of you for being such amazing panelists this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you may be joining us from. We hope that this was informative and helpful. Please take this moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out some of our other videos, and get a look at all of our different social media and content and the ways that you can connect with Northwestern admissions. Our goal is to help you get all the answers and be as informed as possible in the process. So thank you all. Please do not hesitate to reach out and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.